Hi, my name is Hitendra Patel. I represent the Global Innovation Management Institute. We are honored to be part of the Global Council for Innovation Organizations because we are very excited about the opportunity of spreading innovation globally through certifications and standards. This council that we have put together will allow us to share best practices, exchange ideas between universities, between governments, between companies, between different geographies. It is the exchange of these ideas and this ecosystem that we are building that will help us close the gap and democratize innovation everywhere and improve the quality of life of every human on this planet.
Perfect. Welcome to the Global Council of Innovative Organizations. As you know, every basically month, we have a session where we share about innovation frameworks, where we share about innovative trends and anything in terms of frameworks which are pushing forward innovation in governments ecosystems. Today, I have the pleasure to have the host, one of the main members of GCIO, which is Professor Piquet from La Salle University. And Professor Piquet, please, the floor is yours to introduce the speaker, the session for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arilan. Thank you very much, all of you, for sharing this moment in order to learn and to learn more and more about how Professor Jerry Engel was adding experience and practice, writing papers, writing books, and also doing and helping a lot of ecosystems around the world. And how can we transform our ecosystems in a real high growth industries. I am really, as you know, member of the Global Council for Innovative Organization. This is an incredible platform that is connecting the 5 continents of the world under the leadership of Hitendra Patel and Jimmy. And really, one of the things that we want is to really to learn and to share how can we advance in our ecosystems. And the best way to learn is to listen people like Professor Jerry Engel that, let me tell you, and it's a very personal pitch in this case, because I really met Jerry more than 20 years ago. I remember that when I was visiting Silicon Valley, I knocked the door of one person that he didn't know me. Let me tell you that because sometimes you don't know who is behind the door, but sometimes it's an opportunity to share to somebody something that perhaps will change their life. And this is what Jerry Engel was doing with me, because opening the door of, in this case, I remember in the Leicester Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, where he was leading, and he was the founder and executive director of this center in the Harvard School of Business in UC Berkeley. Was opening the door not only for connecting with him and his family and also all the ecosystem, also for opening the door for the new knowledge that I didn't know. Because sometimes we know what we know and we're very comfortable. Sometimes we don't know something, and when we don't know something, we listen and we hear others. But sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And how can we really look for a new framework? It seems okay. And that's the reason why I have to tell you, Jerry, thank you a lot for opening the door in this moment, but not only the door of your person and your family, also the door of the knowledge that you were providing to me in the clusters of innovation. This is an incredible framework for understanding what is the rules of the game in the ecosystem, who is doing what, why we need startups, investors, corporates, and what is the role of the games and what is the game at the end of the day. And that's the wonderful thing that I feel that we will listen today. How can we learn more and more how to create ecosystems of innovation, understanding how can we encourage our ecosystems to transform realities. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Why, thank you so much, Professor Piquet. You know, when you knocked on my door, was it 20 years ago? That it was opening a door for me too. Perhaps I helped open a door for you, but it was opening a door for me too, because since we began to collaborate those many years ago, we've done many things together, and it's broadened my world as well. And that's a key message, I think, for all of us, about ecosystems, that none of us stand alone in this challenge of innovation. None of us stand alone in trying to evolve our companies or start new companies or grow our existing companies. We stand with others. Those people may be in our direct supply chain. They may be, vendors. They may be colleagues. They may be financiers. But in any case, it's a community effort, and sometimes they're your partners. So vendors become partners over time. People with whom you have contractual relationships become people who convey more than just the tangible value that they're conveying under the contract, but the intangible value of relationship, knowledge, and continually broadening your knowledge base and capabilities. I'd like to share with you a brief presentation and looking at how we respond to challenges with innovation and how we can do that to further our companies. May I just ask, is my presentation currently being shared? Do you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. One moment, please. There. Is
Perfect.
it up?
Perfect.
Perfect. Very good. Okay, so thank you for that wonderful introduction, Joseph. The only thing I'd want to share, anybody can find out about exactly who I am or whatever by looking up things online. But the things I would want to point out is that in the field of innovation and entrepreneurship, one of the things we want to look for in ourselves and in others is cross-disciplinary. In other words, not just doing one thing as an expert, but also putting that to work. So in my career as a faculty member, and Joseph referenced papers and books, etc., the usual types of things a faculty member does, I've had the great opportunity to actually put this knowledge to work as an entrepreneur, founding businesses, as a investor in businesses, as a founder of venture capital firms. And I've also worked in major global enterprises for long stretches of time. So I had a 20-year career in global enterprise. I had a 20-year career. Some of this overlaps in venture capital. So in addition to being an academic, and that's important not only about myself, but about working in a field of rapid change. In the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to try and cover the highlights of these elements in front of us. And the key, though, even if we don't get through all of it today, is about the reaction to change. Is our reaction to change, because change is all around us, is it constructive? Does it add value? Or do we simply, run and hide because of the challenges? And how do we add value when we're challenged? Add value to our economy, add value to our colleagues, and to all our partners. So as an example of this kind of challenge, I'd like to do a thought experiment with you. The question is, when you look at industry, and here's some, what do you see when you look at industry? What do you see when you look at challenges? And in this case, when I look at these pictures, the thing I see as a business person, these happen to be desalination plants. But the thing I see is capital intensity. I see, gosh, that takes a lot of money to, if somebody's in the desalination business, it's going to be hugely expensive. You're going to need massive plants. And that would be when you say, well, let's go look at some others in different places. Yeah, you still see massive plants. They're almost like petrochemical refineries. And the other thing you're going to notice is that they're by the water. So you need massive investments, you need massive natural resources. But then you look at this picture, what do you see? You see small solutions, light solutions to the same problem. These are freestanding desalination plants. And what does one have to do with the other? Well, the massive, large-scale solution was the one for a chronic need, a need that's there all the time. This light, in place, bespoke solution that provide, with very little capital, provides the same, at a smaller scale and lesser efficiency, but provides the same solution, water, fresh water, to the same problem. It was created out of a disaster, out of a need, out of a challenge that came from change. And that disaster were the dramatic volcanic eruptions that occurred in the Canary Islands a few years ago. When those eruptions occurred, there was a dislocation, there was a real absence of water, water supplies were disrupted, and the industry, the farming industry, the people, they were all going to suffer dramatic losses because of a lack of drinking water. And so you have this response from innovative people say, wait a minute, can't we do something immediately in just a few months, put together a solution that we can ship to these islands and drop in place with helicopters and set up for immediate solutions? So the point to generalize is that dramatic change, whether it's environmental, technological, like AI, artificial intelligence, or sociological, changes in governments, changes in people's behavior. These stressors, when they hit a tipping point, cause a stimulus for change. Now, when I look at that type of innovation, what's my frame of reference? What's my point of focus? And my point of focus is the same as everybody else's. It's your local context. And this is my local context. This is a picture of the University of California, Berkeley. And we talked about ecosystems earlier on. When I started to think of ecosystems, I looked at my immediate community and said, what can I learn from my immediate community? And Professor Piquet and I together did research in this area. And actually, Joseph was one of the thinkers that helped me originate some frameworks that became very important. And we may discuss those specific frameworks later. But I want to use my few minutes today is to talk about how shocks like COVID-19 actually impacts, us, and what can we learn from it? And what we learn from it is that where we are today, would we be in this kind of learning environment at this moment if we hadn't suffered from COVID-19? Did COVID actually stimulate getting people online? Of course, people were online before. Of course, Skype existed before. It wasn't Zoom dominant. We're on Zoom today, and that's an important difference. We're not on Skype. We're not on Microsoft. We're on Zoom. And why did people inflect toward a Zoom solution so quickly and then adopt behaviors where we're all comfortable being all around the world, coming into our virtual classroom and learning today? That's a change that happened because of the external shock of COVID-19. It would have slowly, incrementally happened, but overnight, we all adopted this behavior. So in March 2020, just a few years ago, we had this dramatic impact. And now everything we do, we can say how it's different when we look at it through the lens of COVID-19. It was a major collective global pivot point. So the shock of COVID-19, I don't have to, go through the detail, the emergence of Zoom, but we still see the residual impact of that. Today, in the popular news, if you follow the economic news, we're all aware that the stock market has bifurcated. It's divided in two. There are the leading tech stocks, and there's everybody else. And that is still a result of what was initiated with COVID-19, where the recognition of the power of this telecommunications process we're using now, as extended, by cloud computation, as extended by AI, has had the world recognize, oh, these tech companies are more than just other companies. They're really the future in a very pronounced way. And we have this division of value. And that division of value is going to continue. So that's another shock, because you can't just have a small industrial company and, incrementally go up the ladder of financing as well as you used to be able to. You have to have something that demonstrates that you're participating in this 21st century economy. So how do you get lucky? How did Zoom get lucky, right? Well, were they lucky or were they prepared? At the time COVID hit, Zoom was a minor player compared to Skype. We all used Skype at that time, now Teams. But, we can comment in the Q&A, but I would bet that you shifted. Think of your own behavior, that some of your online communication, a larger percentage shifted from the Skype platform, which required the other party to log in and have a Skype ID, versus the Zoom platform. It just required that you send them a link. So Zoom addressed a new market segment, the unsophisticated person who was not used to telecommunications. So when Zoom hit, and you need to reach out to your brother, your sister, or your mother and say, how are you doing? I can't come see you. We're locked down. What was the tool? What was the easiest tool to use? And that little difference between Skype requiring that they had already have an ID versus Zoom just saying, here, I've sent you a link, click on it, and we'll be able to chat online with the whole 360 visual interaction. Those kinds of preparations, they weren't preparing necessarily for COVID. Nobody knew it was coming, but having that hard work already done, when the tipping point came, they were the right choice. Now, of course, we have the Microsoft response, and we have Teams becoming increasingly competitive and dominant, and that's the role of the incumbent. The grinding machine has caught up, and now Teams has its own advantages, and many of us prefer Teams because of institutional consistency, et cetera, the sophistication of the Teams solution. So that's how radical change happens. That's really how innovation happens. There's a long line of preparation, and then there's the flip. We had the same thing in life sciences with the vaccines, where we learned how to do vaccines in 4 months rather than 4 years. That didn't happen overnight. That research was not started right after COVID. It was started years before. Those people were prepared, and then all the major vaccines used small companies, technology. They licensed it, incorporated it, and manufactured at scale. So a major theme for us in terms of how to be innovative is to look at other companies and see how we can partner with them. And many times, large companies can partner with smaller companies by licensing or investing in them and collaborating with them. And that's the beginning of this ecosystem that Joseph Piquet was addressing. So this life cycle of technology, has a process of research. It's very slow, then commercialization, where we have a lot of product performance, and then maturity, where again, things stabilize. And the place it's easiest to be heavily innovative is in this period during rapid change and rapid adoption. So this is not all a process that happens within one company. It happens in many companies for a given technology. And we see this pattern over and over again. And everybody has a role to play: universities, entrepreneurs, and major corporations. So creating value through innovation is best done when we're riding waves of innovation. And these waves of innovation recur within any given industry as there are major platform shifts. Right now, we're undergoing a major platform shift in telecommunications and computation through augmentation using artificial intelligence, AI, deep learning, large databases. These computational approaches, the impact of artificial intelligence on all of us is creating another disruption. And that disruption is going to be ongoing. And the people that are involved in it, like Facebook, et cetera, are capturing a lot of the value. Why do I mention Facebook? Just because they're a typical major incumbent who has a lot of data because of the number of users, they have an existing population, and they can get directly involved in applying these sophisticated techniques. But we can't just look at the major corporations and what they're doing. We have to be able to deploy this in all our businesses and all our capabilities. I'm looking to move this discussion to a second major point I want to make. So we have disruption and we have response. We have the waves of innovation that we have to capture. Sometimes we miss them. The last point I want to introduce before we have a more thorough discussion, perhaps, is how we, the tools of staying in this space of this. Okay. Pardon me. Okay. I'm trying to skip ahead in the presentation because I want to respect our time. Okay, everybody shut your eyes. Don't look at this, don't look at this, don't look at that. This I want to point out, this is innovation from a major corporation, right? This is incremental innovation. This sustains, in other words, small enhancements in your capability, sustain your existing customer. What we either want to take advantage of or disrupt is when there's a major platform shift. So each of us have to decide whether we're making small incremental changes or major capability changes when we adopt artificial intelligence or other new technologies. If it's a major shift, like Zoom, it'll work when you reach out to a new market segment or expanded market segment. If you're making a small adaptation, it's the existing customers who will benefit from that. If you move from an internal combustion car and you enhance the mileage, you'll compete better against other sellers of regular automobiles. If you're moving to an electrical vehicle manufacturer, the reason Tesla was able to disrupt the industry and acquire it because they actually grabbed the early adopter, a new market segment, and offered them something quite different. So capturing value from change is a critical element. That can be a technology change. It can be a business model change, like in Spotify or Airbnb. So change doesn't just come from technology, it comes from how we buy. And so the online economy or the economy of using shared existing resources like Uber and Airbnb, that economy, those are changes in behavior enabled by technology, but it's not the technology itself. So what are the kinds of changes? And these waves of innovation are coming and they're shorter and faster and have huge impacts. So when we look at our own businesses, what are the coming waves of innovation? We don't have to forecast a long way. We can look right around us today and say, well, it was COVID 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's artificial intelligence today. So how do we execute? If we're a small corporation, we look at partnering perhaps with major corporations to collaborate. If we're a major corporation, we may look at investing in acquiring or partnering with emerging corporations that have already developed these solutions for new market segments. So these transactions are not done through traditional styles of acquiring and integrating for efficiency. When these transactions are done around innovation, they're done with sophistication, leaving the innovative teams intact so they can preserve the experimentation and learning cycle that new innovations require. There are frameworks for doing these transactions. We can talk about them. Generally, they go under the rubric of open innovation. There are different strategies for where the technologies arise, whether they arise in this fit and location matrix, whether they arise inside the corporation, or whether they arise outside the corporation. The zones in yellow here are the zones where collaboration with small businesses has the best opportunity. So everybody wants to be essentially operating with some exposure to this zone of innovation and staying in it. Sometimes people use corporate venture capital, but in all cases, it's these collaborations that keep us with the capability to lead through innovation. And a final thought is that the behavioral things that we can talk about how to get this done is that we look at win-win solutions, not win-lose solutions when we do these collaborations between big and small. Because innovation and entrepreneurship are a team sport. Those are my introductory comments, Joseph, and I will turn it back to you.
Good. Thank you, Jerry, for this framework because it allows us to understand this interesting approach. No, it's in one hand you say there is always innovation, and there is it could be continuous innovation, but it will be disruptive innovation. But disruptive innovation usually will come from startups or companies that they can really change the framework, change the way of doing, or not only business model, but also in this case coming from the research and the technology. For instance, imagine now with artificial intelligence, there is a new technology that is rethinking different sectors, different ways of doing, and so on. In this way, how in the is my first question, and let me ask the audience to write the questions in the chat. But my first question is really to understand the components and also the behaviors, because it's what element really we need to consider to create an ecosystem, in this case, a cluster of innovation. And it's not just the elements, it's what components, it's what behaviors, what they have to do, everyone, because the role of university, I understand, or research labs is important for providing new disruptive technologies, but everyone is doing a role. It's a general question, but I feel that will allow us to understand this general framework.
Well, the elements, you know, are really depending on where we're starting from. If we put ourselves in the seat of the entrepreneur, the innovator, as a first start, we need knowledge, we need an insight, we need expertise. So we need to partner with those that have expertise. Sometimes that expertise, if it's pure technology, might be at a university. Sometimes that expertise is people who've been practitioners in a field or know a market really well. Might be a geographic market, whatever. And then we need to partner with people who have the resources to enable us to penetrate this market or bring the solution to market. And those resources might be financial. So a component of a cluster of innovation would be those financial resources, and also the incumbents that are already there that own the market. So this triangle between the innovators, the financiers, and the incumbents are critical. But there are many other players that help speed this along. That people who help it happen, the institutions who are out there, these institutions that look to help innovation be accelerated. Sometimes they're called accelerators. Sometimes they're sponsored by governments. Sometimes they're freestanding entities, and they make financial investments in these startups. Sometimes they're venture capitalists who are interested in helping startups or early stage companies. So you have you have these elements, but how do they behave? And you said behaviors, and it's that how you know that the behaviors are just crucial. And the behaviors have to be these win-win type of approaches we discussed. And so we have to mobilize these resources. And too oftentimes in economies, the resources are stuck. Like the banks have the money, the major corporations have the customers, the universities have the science and technology, but there's not a fluid mixing. And so that fluid mixing actually, we've studied it, and it requires mobility. And there are behaviors that enable that mobility. It's having a faculty who are interested in commercialization. So they're out there telling about their ideas and willing to experiment and take the risk on their own educational careers, where they take time out and help start businesses or develop products. Engineers who are willing to, in their spare time or in addition to their regular work, build prototypes. That process of risk-taking, and it is not just being mobile, but it's also being an entrepreneurial process, looking to create value, to solve. What is an entrepreneurial process? It's looking to do something that even though you don't have all the resources to bring forward the whole project, you're willing to make progress and take risk. And then you have to behave with people in a way that's aligned with each other, so that it's a win-win solution, so that you're not extracting value from one party and then trying to exploit it on your own, but you're forming partnerships and collaborations, because nobody has enough resources really to do anything on their own. We need to collaborate. And then for many of us around the world on this chat this morning, we have to recognize the need to have a global approach. We have to be local and global at the same time, because we have to be local to be able to experiment and do prototypes and test them, etc. But in order to attract the financial resources and the major corporate resources, we have to be looking at it globally to be addressing a big enough market to make this capture the attention. So we have the mobility of resources, the entrepreneurial process, the alignment of interests, and having a global perspective. And lastly, to put that global perspective to work, we have to have relationships or linkages between the elements, locally and globally. So you have to do the work early. You can't just wait until you have the idea. You have to be doing everything at the same time. Like last night, where was I? I was at a meet and greet sponsored by MIT. Why was I, a faculty member at Berkeley, at a meet and greet for the MIT Press, their publishing house? I'm not directly involved with MIT. I know, Professor Piquet, you have an MIT tie you're very proud of. But why was I, doing this outreach? Why was I spending time there? It was because I was extending my network. I was being engaged in my community. Well, MIT's not in your backyard. Well, they're in my country, even though they're on the East Coast. Having those relationships are important. And I don't know how they're going to be important, but I just know that they will be important. Like when you knocked on my door, the relationship with you, what was I doing in Barcelona? Nothing at the time, right?
Yeah.
But it's led to a lot of opportunities. I see we have a question from
Perhaps we can ask start with Hitendra, that is with us in direct live. Hitendra, do you have any question for Jory Engel? Micro, please. Open micro.
Professor Engel, thank you for being on this event. I'm very happy that you're here. And
Thank you.
and I think the framework you provide simplifies what seems like a complex set of ideas. And that's always very helpful for scaling ideas. So thank you for that. One of the challenges, and we've been talking about open innovation for probably more than 50 years now, maybe even
Yes.
80 years, probably. That's not a new topic anymore. And
Absolutely.
initially it was about ideas being exchanged and crowdsourcing ideas, and how people saw it. And then people begin to realize that it's the access to assets and competencies ultimately to be able to do things, and maybe get funding for it, with the funding partners also involved. The challenge that we are facing in general is trust. Trust between organizations, between functions, between regions, between cultures, saying how do we collaborate, knowing we all understand that you have the assets and the resources, and we should work together. We all understand that we should be somehow open. We all understand we should do win-win models. We all understand that we got to do all this. But then when it comes down to the leather meeting the road, or the rubber meeting the road, we find that it's very, very hard. So what are the best practices you're seeing now in you can get a match between two organizations who are collaborating, but then how do you make the match actually happen, making it real?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. It's central and it's very difficult, but I'll give you the answer. It's cultural. Okay. And by cultural, I don't mean, French versus European versus American versus Middle Eastern. I don't mean that kind of cultural. By cultural, I mean that there's a culture of innovation. There's a culture of, oh, my computer wants to confirm I'm speaking Dutch. I'm not speaking Dutch. I'm speaking English. I'm sorry, I got a pop-up screen. I had to get it away. Innovators themselves have a culture, right? And it's called, I'll call it the culture of entrepreneurship more than innovation. Now, entrepreneurship doesn't just mean startups, but it means, it means taking control of change. Those people who, again, take the risk, as a standard definition that I love, and I'm working my way around without trying to cite it, but I'll cite it. It's the pursuit of opportunity. It's Howard Stevenson at Harvard University. The pursuit of opportunity beyond the resources one has under their own control, right? That's entrepreneurial behavior in a sentence. So those people that pursue opportunity where they don't have the resources under their own control. What that intrinsically means is that entrepreneurial behavior requires collaboration. You do not control the resources. You have to have somebody else partner with you or collaborate with you. This is where trust comes in, right? So the people who will more likely participate and trust, if you want to use that word, trust each other, are people who share that approach to problem solving. They're in the same culture, the culture of entrepreneurship. So and that's a global culture. And there are many subcultures of entrepreneurship. So the behavior in Malaysia is not necessarily the same behavior as in Kuwait or in Riyadh or in New York City or in Barcelona. But they share a commonality among entrepreneurs, and that's the pursuit of opportunity beyond the resources they control. So how do you go to the next step? Well, the next step has to do with the arrangements, that the deals you strike truly have an alignment of interest, that you either win together or lose together, that if one party wins, both party wins, pro rata to the value of their contribution. Now, that might sound so simple. That's just simply a partnership, right? That's how it works. But business deals, in the extreme case, are win-win aligned or win-lose, right? I buy it from you and I sell. I mean, the marketplace of material goods can be a win-lose marketplace. I buy it from you, the cheaper I buy it from you, the better off I am. The higher I sell it to the next guy, the better off I am, and I get the margin between win-lose. Well, that has boundaries because, if I don't treat my suppliers well, they're not going to be there for me so I can buy from them, right? So I have to, while I want a good price, I have to pay a fair price over time if I'm going to have a reliable source of supply, et cetera, et cetera. That's the beginning of trust, right? So trust doesn't come because of magic, and it doesn't because we get together and we say, oh, we're partners, we're going to trust each other. It's because the deal itself has embedded in it win-win structures. So what is a win-win structure? What's an example? An example of a win-win structure is rather than lending you money, what's the difference between a loan and an investment, right? Rather than lending you money, I invest in you. Same amount of money, but the terms are different. A loan, I'm going to get a fixed repayment with a fixed interest. And I'm going to have collateral that if you don't repay me, I'm going to come and take your house or take something from you that you've pledged as collateral. That's win-lose. If I invest in you, the same amount of money, under terms that we agree on, when you make money, I make money. And that builds trust. So that's what I found when I've studied this alignment issue. It's actually embedded in documents you say that don't reflect trust. In other words, if you had trust in sort of a soft way, you wouldn't need legal documents. We trust each other. We know the deal. No, I'm not saying that kind of trust. I'm saying, no, the documents, the employee documents where employees have ownership and or options to buy ownership in the corporation, all these legal agreements where financiers invest in companies rather than just loan money. Those embed win-win and alignment that builds trust, because then people get comfortable doing those transactions over and over and over again in that style. Then you get this collective sort of a greater level of trust. It's not trust like your mother taught you, like trust the policeman. No, this is trust based on the way the agreements are structured.
Okay, good. There are other questions from the audience. One of the question is from Mr. Ian Small, and he's talking about have the companies broken the sustaining and disruptive innovation link by being able to fund hundreds of bets and buy up competitors or duplicate their offering. The idea is, I understand, is there is a change in the way of managing innovation. It's not just to do all in-house, and it's more to bet in different opportunities and to have a portfolio of investment. And it means that you are doing innovation because you are buying innovation, because you are buying the kind of. It's a change in the way of doing innovation.
Is the question, is that a change?
It's a change, or the question is, in this way of disruptive innovation, how we do disruptive innovation. Because if we cannot do indoor as a big corporation, where we will find disruptive innovation?
Well, this is where we're getting back to the thought of open innovation again. There are, yes, okay. So what was my premise? My premise was what the major corporation will oftentimes not move fast enough. They'll move incrementally to protect their position with their existing customer, but they won't react to disrupt their relationship with their existing customer with a truly, we call disruptive innovation, but it's more extreme innovation in style. And that's why we need a smaller company to develop a new market segment, et cetera. And so how does that happen? And that's a very important question. There are a lot of different tools. And again, these are tools are legal agreements and the nature of those legal agreements. The one I like to talk about oftentimes is having the major corporation invest in various emerging companies with a long time horizon in a partnership methodology. This is generally called corporate venture capital. And there's a lot of art to how that is done. I mean, I teach a course at Berkeley for a week on just that one topic, on how the art of corporate venture capital and how it gets deployed. Most major corporations have a department that does that. Some do it well, most do it poorly or not as well as they might. But this special organization, the corporate venture capital part, is one that tries to make two organizations that are very different operate in ways that are collaboratively. And it's not just it's not a soft thing. It's not about just introductions, but it's really about mutual education and educating the major corporation about how and what it takes to work with smaller companies over a long period of time. And for educating the smaller companies in terms of the needs of the major corporation, and still enabling that smaller company to experiment and have its own customers and other collaborations beyond the major corporation, so that it is seeking its own personal self-interest. But in the end, it's good for both parties seeking their own self-interest. It's a bit of a black art, but it takes special attention. It just can't be done on a one-off transaction. It's very hard to do it on a one-off transaction, from the office of the president investing directly in an earlier, smaller business. It really takes a certain skill to do it at scale, as the participant said, making many investments, sometimes in businesses that are competitive with each other.
Okay, Jan, do you want to add any consideration on your question?
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for the call today. It's been a very interesting discussion. Just very briefly to follow up on my point, I was wondering whether you opened, Professor, with the sort of two tiers of the stock market. Now we have the technology companies that have got more cash than they know what to do with, and the traditional industries that don't. And the traditional model was that the incumbents get disrupted because somebody comes along and does something different. But the tech companies, because they've got more money than they can spend, can prevent that disruption from happening now, because they can either buy up all of the startups or have done the disruption themselves. And so I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
So Ian, do you remember Microsoft in 1990?
I do, yes.
Okay, well, just put that lens on. Microsoft in 1990 was the big tech company that had huge value, and I don't have the data point exactly in my mind, whether it's 1990 or 1992, whatever, but huge valuation. And they treated technology partnership and collaboration with small companies not in the best way. We sometimes called them Darth Vader, because they were just so big and had so much money, and many times they bought small companies up and then hid them away. They didn't do M&A in the best way, as I was trying to say. There's a special M&A. So in other words, you can use that power, like you're saying, Ian, to sustain your position and to protect, build a moat around yourself. And anytime anybody got in close to you, you just gobble them up and they disappear inside the organism. So I was part of a lot of discussions like in the 90s where, Microsoft is knocking on the door. Can we afford not to talk to them, et cetera, et cetera. And you could say, well, isn't Google doing that now? Or isn't, Amazon, doing that now? Name your favorite mega platform. Well, how well did Microsoft do? I mean, there was the antitrust litigation. Okay, that was a barrier for them. But in general, it wasn't just the antitrust legal matters. They really lost position. I mean, I know they're still today a big company, but who are they today? They're not the Microsoft they were. When you look at where their sources of revenue are, Windows is I'm sorry, I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's like less than 25% of their business. The cloud business, of course, for them has taken off. Now, what did it take? It took 2 generations of leadership change. It took 20 to 30 years of them not wanting to change. And then now just really putting their whole business model at risk at one point about 8 years ago with a change of leadership and saying, we're not going to rely on operating systems anymore. We're going to be a service provider in the cloud and bring that capability rather than licensing it. We're going to run it as a business, et cetera. So now Microsoft is still Microsoft. You could say, well, so what are you saying? They're still the same. But I don't think they're the same. I don't think they're the same business. I think they've been taken over by a different crowd and the business is run in a different way. So, will NVIDIA be NVIDIA 10 years from now? I don't think so. Will Google be Google 10 years from now? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think that you can now Amazon may still be Amazon. I mean, who has the bigger, protective capabilities? I don't think technology is going to protect anybody in perpetuity. Business models might have a long, and that's why I say Amazon might have a more sustainable long-term advantage until somebody else can build that logistics infrastructure.
Yeah, it connects perhaps.
Did I get your answer? Do you believe
That's
me,
great.
Ian,
Thank you
or
very
not? I want to know, Ian, if you believe me.
No, I hadn't really considered the transformation of the business inside itself as a solution to the problem, and we haven't got time now. But then the question is, will Google go through a similar change with its antitrust that it's currently facing? But let's pick that on another day.
Another day.
Connected with this question, Jerry, there is another one from Tiago from Brazil that is asking, as you say, I don't know, Tiago, if you want to have the micro, or in any case, I can read your question, but it's considering all the waves of innovation historically, we had more or less one big wave every 40 years. Now we see several big waves, 6G, AI, cloud.
I got it. I read the question here, and Joseph, I just want to respect time. When I asked Tiago a question, Tiago, there you are.
Hey,
Tiago, can you, to answer your question, can you just tell me what business are you in?
I'm in education with Giuseppe Piquet here at La
Okay,
Salle.
all right. So this is a softball question from inside the park. Okay. I think the answer here, Tiago, is that we don't sit around and say what's the next wave. I mean, we don't know, right? Is it material science? I mean, some nanomaterial, or is it hydrogen energy, or who knows? I mean, we're not smart enough to know, and we don't have enough capital, not enough time in our lives, and enough money to sit around and say, well, I'm going to bet on this and then give it 30 years to mature, because we don't know where the tipping point is, right? So I think for those of us in the room, if you will, the question is really, how does XYZ innovation affect me right now? For instance, how does the shift of all transactions to a platform affect me, like Amazon as a platform, or Netflix as a platform? These things that are more open platforms or proprietary platforms, that's a business model shift, that everything's a global market and available online and delivered to my door, etc. Does that affect me? How does AI affect me? That's an easy one, in that it's becoming more of a functional. I think we're already seeing is a platform stabilization of sort of capabilities, even though it's still rapidly evolving. We can sort of see the curve, as we move from the third to fourth to the fifth generation. We all need to be experimenting with that capability at that level to verticalize it. In other words, apply it to our own situation. You need to apply it to education. I need to apply it to my coursework. I need to apply it to how I give this lecture. I need to apply it, in everything I do. to see where, not that I have to use it in everything I do, but some dimensions, it's going to add a lot of value immediately. Creating examinations for my students, grading examinations for my students, whatever. It's not going to be perfect, but I'll get myself on the learning curve. That's what we need to be doing today. I mean, like all these innovation processes could really be brought down to like, okay, let's all take a half hour and think of how we could deploy existing tools against our existing situation. What are the barriers? What can accelerate it? Are there things we could do together in this room as joint projects where we would learn collaboration and win-win behaviors together to further some common goals, and actually just put it to work, because it's such an easy case right now, relative. It's an accessible technology. You know, at $10 a month, you can be be at the top level of access for, for the consumer level products. This is a rare moment in time. So we don't have to be looking at the next wave as much as jumping on this one and saying, gee, I don't want to be left behind. Now, I can be left behind. I've written my books, but
Good.
Thiago, you can't be left behind. You're at least 30 years younger than I am.
Thank you.
Jerry, there are other several questions, but perhaps let me choose one from one startup that is, in this case, Brett Trusco. I don't know, Brett, if you can really share with us your thoughts about the startup industry and how do you think that, please, Brett, share with us.
Hi, Dr. Engel. Am I on camera?
Hi,
Can you hear
Brett. We see you. We hear you.
Good.
What's the red?
So-
What's the red? Wait, Brett. What's the red hat about?
Oh, that's just the Staten Island Yankees. I don't think they exist anymore.
Okay, I love it. Go ahead.
That's you in baseball because their outfield looked at Manhattan. Anyways, so I'm a professor of entrepreneurship and innovation. I've written a number of books. You might know some of my work. And one of the things I caution my students about these days is this startup industry. Well, we've got accelerators, but you pay to be in there. We've got innovation hubs, but you pay to be in there. So everybody's going to make you a billionaire. But in my opinion, they're snake oil salesmen, a lot of them. I've got an amazing technology platform that's actually making money, but I can't expand. And I'm on the process of this huge expansion. And it's the same thing from all these investors. Oh, I'm an investor. I'm a private equity guy. I'm a this, I'm a that. I think it works really well in bars for picking up women. But in reality, they always say the same thing. Well, you've got a great technology, and when you have $5 million in revenue, I'm going to lend you $5 million, or I'm going to invest to the tune of $5 million.
So, Brett,
Yeah,
you need to take that red hat off.
I got hair.
No. I just mean metaphorically. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You need to change your hat. You got another hat there handy? I mean, I love your Yankees or whoever they are, the Staten Island, whatever. But my point is, you're talking to the wrong people.
Well,
so I mean, I don't doubt there are plenty of those people in the world, right? And I know a lot of them. That's a much better hat, whatever it is. Now, change who you're talking to, and when you're talking to people like that, excuse yourself and go somewhere else, because you need to talk to people who say, I don't know if I love your idea or not, but if we do business, I'm not going to lend you money. I'll invest in you. Now, people who invest, hopefully invest selectively because they have limited capital and they have limited time. So, and the only way to know what somebody really does is when you're having that bar conversation, is to say, oh, I see you say you're a private equity guy, you're investing. I want to know more about you. I'd like to be able to talk to 2 or 3 of the CEOs that you've invested in, right? And to do due diligence on them. And what you want is to understand the terms and conditions under which they invested. Were they loans? Were they convertible loans? A convertible loan is different than a regular loan, right? A convertible loan is only going to be essentially an equity instrument. In other words, a forever partnership, a win-win, lose-lose. Where a regular loan, of course, is a win-lose instrument. Your accelerators that charge you money, that's one type of accelerator. But like our local accelerator here does not charge anything. They give you $200,000. Now you have to compete to get in that accelerator. They have 100 applications for every seat. But if you win one of those seats, now it's not such a gift, right? Because it's $200,000 for 7% of your company. So the valuation isn't a good valuation, but they tell you up front, if you get accepted, this is the deal. And
Right.
and you can talk to others. So you can choose not to pursue it because it's a low valuation, but they give a lot of value add, right?
But
so all
part
I
of
say is,
Yeah.
before I'm going to let you finish, I promise. But what I wanted people to hear is I want to give credibility to what you're saying. Those are conversations you can be having. And it's about community and where you put yourself. So sometimes you got to stretch. Now, I'm not talking to you personally, but to those of us in the room, you got to stretch yourself beyond the networks you have into other networks. And how do you get into them? You get referred into them by saying to somebody, oh, who's your investor? Are they a good person? I don't want to approach that person for investment in me necessarily, but I want to talk to them about how they invest and who, and maybe they'll refer me to somebody who would be appropriate for my situation. It's a lot of work.
Well, and part of the bottom line is, I'm kissing a hell of a lot of frogs to try to get to the prince.
That's the way it works.
There's less and less princes and more frogs. And there's a lot of people out there making money off of all these poor kids who are trying to do their startups. And I'm afraid it may kill the startup industry at some point.
No, it won't. I'm going to come right at I'm going to come right at you, Brett, because I agree with you so much that there's a lot of froth. And especially if you go online, everybody's an expert. Everybody's a repeat entrepreneur. I love that term. I'm a repeat entrepreneur. Oh, what the hell does that mean? So yes, there's a lot of froth and you can be misled. And that's why you have to do your due diligence. You have to kiss a lot of frogs and you have to go beyond the first level of inquiry, to do the due diligence behind people to build trust. And trust isn't trust, but it's knowledge, right? About people and circumstances and how they do business. And that's why I just want to come right at you because I agree with you. There's a lot of froth, but that means we just have to do the work. If there wasn't froth, there'd be no market, right? So with a good market, froth and misleading people and people you don't want to do business with is an indication of a lot of velocity in a market.
Okay.
And that's a good thing. So without velocity,
sorry,
there's nothing.
But our time is over.
Oh, I'm so
Officially
sad.
over. Let me ask you the last takeaway, Jerry. Perhaps we can stop the broadcast, and after that, we can have a digital coffee with Brett and the rest of the people that they want to be here with that. Key lessons, Jerry. The takeaway, the more important takeaway, perhaps is trust the keyword that you want to send.
No, no, because trust it has too many meanings. So it's alignment of interest.
Alignment of interest.
In other words, that's boiling trust down to a contract or an agreement where we win and lose together, where we're on the same team. And that's what I would take away is innovation happens with partnership and open innovation when we have alignment of interest. And I want to thank everybody on the call. I want to thank Danny and Jiang and Mohammed and all these names I see here, Sultan and Fatma and Ali and Khalid. And of course, you, Professor Joseph, for moderating this session. It's been a joy to be here this morning.